Alright, hello. Hang on. Let me just make sure audio is good. Where? It's not there. Why is it hard to find these things? Yep, okay, I'm good. I'm streaming without headphones because this game has no audio at the moment. So yeah, this is the game I've been messing around with, and I'll be working on it for pretty much just this weekend. Is all I'm gonna do now, and then I'll switch back to Yawnoc and PixCarts primarily after this weekend. I just have to do this for a video I have planned. So yeah, I'm making a game with a custom rendering engine and networking framework. Here, let me grab the other, or start up another client so I can demonstrate. So if I just go desktop stuff, CD, I always forget what I called this game. Bullet Owls. So this game is actually going to be like a I haven't played the like pirate type games, but it's going to be mostly like, most of the world's going to be water, and it'll be like different islands you kind of fight bosses on and stuff like that, and can claim and build on. But most of the world's going to be water, and so you'll be able to like sail around with other players and like fight stuff on islands and stuff like that and gather resources. I also want to make it so that the economy is actually interesting in this game by making it so that you can't like teleport places. I think I have some solutions in mind so that you can still like play with friends if you want to, but while still preventing basically ruining the economy by teleporting stuff around, because I want things to be kind of like have regional pricing to a degree. Just like things will have different values depending on how close they are to where they were produced. So I really want to play with the economy on this one. But yeah, so you can see I've got two clients here. This is going to my server. I could set this up on my actual server that I rent, but in this case I've just got it running locally. So yeah, it's all networked. If I minimize this one, yeah. I've got the shooting and movement and stuff like that all networked. I can go swimming. In the future, it will be a lot better if you have a boat for these types of things. I should probably change the fact that jumping is by far the fastest way to move in water. Actually, it depends on how you do it, because yeah, you got to get enough velocity on it. But yeah, so right now I have this randomly generated island. I want it to be, or if you notice, one jump is not enough to go up a block, and that's intentional. I want it to be that you mostly use like ladders and ramps later on. I don't have those yet, but later on I want it to be ladders and ramps that you use to go up. I don't want you to be able to jump up blocks. So most of the island's going to be pretty flat at water level, and then this will just be like kind of an obstacle, and it'll block your bullets and stuff like that. But if you are climbing an island, you could like build up here by like putting ladders or ramps. Right now I have it so I can just do infinite jumps to get up here, but yeah. And then here's like the edge of the island, you can see. So there's just water out here. But so what I have for today is going to be adding. Thank you, YouTube, for telling me to add ads. I don't want to add ads. So what I want to do today is to add slimes that will naturally spawn and that you can fight. I think for now I'll do it spawning based on player location. So every player will naturally have slime spawning around them. rather than naturally spawning on the island. So I'll have to change that up later, but for now I just want them to spawn around here. And then I want to be able to fight them. Got to be able to shoot them. I want them to be able to shoot me. I need health, stuff like that. I'm not sure how far I'll get on the stream. I would like to at least get to the point where the slimes are spawning and jumping around, and then maybe make it so that I can shoot them. Yeah. I think the way it'll work is that I'm trying to think about how I briefly thought about how I was going to network them, because I don't want to make the player experience bad just because it's networked, because there's all sorts of stuff that happens with latency, and I want to be able to handle the extremely high latencies I get, because like in PixCarts, like half the people have 200 ping. So if I don't have regional servers, I'm going to need to have netcode that is very forgiving on a lot of things, while also not being super annoying for the players. So the actual approach I use for this stuff is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm thinking that I might copy what I had in my other multiplayer game, because I was originally wanting to put knockback in, but I might copy what I had in the other game, where it's like it looks like it has knockback, but it doesn't actually have knockback. And then maybe if you want to actually do knockback, it will be like a special ability, and it will interrupt abilities. Attacks from the enemies, because the way the attacks would have to work if I want it to be smooth is to have them scheduled. So the server will have to schedule the attacks, and then it'll happen for all the clients at the same time, regardless of your ping, and then that way everything's nice and consistent. But in order to schedule it, you have to know where the enemy will be at certain times. And then you can dynamically cancel it if the enemy's like dead or something. But you would, I would, like for example, the slime will jump, and I need to know when it will land. And that's when it will attack. Is when it lands from its jump. So, I don't know. I've like halfway thought this stuff out, but yeah. So it'll shoot when it lands, and then that'll be scheduled. So all the clients will know when it will land. Well, the server will tell it when it will attack, which will be based on when it lands. And the attack will be based on the location that it anticipates landing on. And then if, for example, you use an ability that actually moves it, like with significant knockback, that will interrupt it so that it won't keep trying to attack. I think that's how it'll have to work. But then the actual shooting it, the knockback from shooting it, I'll do like the other multiplayer game I had from 2 years ago, where it what did I do? Yeah, so the entity stayed in place, but it had like a visual offset, and then it got knocked back and then kind of pulled into its original position, just so there's a little bit of response to being hit. So I think that's how I'll do it. I think I also have to update my shader to add like a flashing thing, so that when you hit it, the entity turns white. That's the classic thing. I also already have the sparks going, but yeah. Anyways, let's get to work. I'll read chat first. Actually, I'll leave the game open so you have something to look at. Can I make a video about my game engine? Well, so this one is just for this game and its rendering system, and I kind of talked about it in my last video. I talked more about the shadows, but yeah, I did talk about it in my last video. I have used Godot 4. I'm not using it right now. Why would I add ads? I don't want to. I'm using Python and OpenGL. I'm using Python and Modern GL, which is just basically an object-oriented interface for OpenGL. I have, if you're trying to learn Pygame and you know Python, look at my platform tutorial. Technically either, but the single video one that's like 6 hours is a better one. The camera tilting thing, I don't know. It's one of those things where if you're the player, it's fine, and it'll be like PixCarts where I'll have a setting for it, so that if it annoys people, like you can turn it down and stuff like that. It's actually useful because you can see the it lets you get a 3D perspective on the terrain, which is a lot more helpful than just this. Like for example, I don't know where this grass hill ends, but I can kind of see if I go at this angle if I'm running right. I'm gonna do other stuff to help with that. Actually, I think if I point the light in the other direction, that might help. Hang on. Where's the? No, actually, it wouldn't. It would have to be at a low angle because otherwise, anything lower than 45 degrees, and you just won't see any shadow. But yeah, so. Yeah, I should think about that. Should the sun be above you or below you? It would be funny if I implemented this as like having an equator in the middle, and the sun angle will depend on where you are in the world. That would be really cool. And I already plan on like having the biomes being regional to different parts of the world. And the way I'll do it is that it'll be based on kind of angle from the origin. So it'll be the world's biomes will kind of be split into slices of areas that they can appear in. So like some can't appear in every area, but the rare ones that have rare materials in them will be in like some certain slices in terms of the angle from the spawn. And that way I can have like some like in the south, for example, or in the southwest specifically. And that adds, that's important to have global trade that actually is important because, and it'll be that certain biomes can only spawn a certain distance away from the spawn as well. So it'll be a combination of the angle and distance that they'll be restricted to. So it'll be that the biomes are kind of randomly placed, but they're within certain predefined areas so that if you want to bring together resources to make some rare items, you'll have to actually do a lot of traveling. So economy stuff, that's what I think would make this game cool. I really want to make a multiplayer game. Like, I hesitate to call it an MMO because the architecture the architecture will support it in theory, but I would have to update a lot of stuff to make that work. So it's going to be, I'm just going to call it online multiplayer for now, and then it'll be an MMO if there's enough players and I end up doing the extra effort to update it in that way. But it'll be, I think, initially like 1 or 2 servers that people can play on. And yeah, you would collect different resources in different parts of the world, and you can bring them together through trade and stuff. And then there would also be like building elements and stuff too. So there would be like cities, hopefully. Or not cities, but like people would build bases on certain islands. So I forgot how I planned on doing it. I planned on having a way where you could get to your base quickly, I think. I can't remember. No, I think I might have been thinking, I would have to look at my notes. I had some interesting ideas about how I would handle bases and the fact that there's a lot of traveling. I don't know. It might be that I was thinking you would have multiple. But anyways. Let's do slimes. So the first step to slimes is I need the sprite sheet. So I'm actually using proper sprite sheets for once instead of 15 images in a folder. And that is because, wait. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't want all of the enemies on one sprite sheet. So I think for now I'll just make like a slime sprite sheet. That's not what I meant to do. Undo all that stuff. Okay. And then we can save it here and we'll call this slime. Later I will organize these enemies so that they don't... Where is it? That's not... No. That's not what I wanted. I want a slime. Slime. There we go. Yeah, later I'll organize this so that all the enemies have like a folder that they'll have their sprite sheets on, but the slime will not have any animations because I'll animate it with deformations. So I'll be like squashing and stretching it to give it some animation. So I have actually been using sprite sheets for once, like real sprite sheets. And the reason is that you load the single texture onto the GPU, and then you tell the GPU which part of the texture you want to use. So there's an actual reason to have a sprite sheet instead of individual files here. With Pygame, it's actually a lot more easy. Well, I'm technically still using Pygame, but when you're using raw Pygame in CPU-based rendering, it's a lot easier to have separate images because your animation is composed of multiple different images that you're rendering and you're switching between them. Whereas in OpenGL, it's a lot faster if you just tell the GPU where on a single image you want to use instead of having a bunch of different textures loaded in. Or at least I think that's faster. It's at least pretty convenient. Anyways, so here's the slime. I need to... you know what? Actually, I don't think I have to add the alphas. So let's go ahead and load it in. Here's... I'm just hard coding my sprite sheets for now. I will change this later. So that's loading this slime sprite sheet. I need the dimensions, so it's 15 by 9. I have to specify this and I can't pull it from the sprite sheet because if there are multiple images, it needs to know what the tile size is. But in this case, it's just one, so it's the same as the image dimension. So we can super slime thing here. I'm actually gonna make this stuff bigger so you guys can see. Hang on. Boop. Oh, that's about as big as I'll go. I've got my new overlay stuff for streaming mostly ready for, and it's good for code, but I just haven't really tested it much yet, so it's not quite there. I might get around to finishing it later this year. It's just not a super high priority right now, so I'm busy with other stuff. Let's see, so slime, we've got it loaded. We need to put it in the game, which means we need a slime entity. And the slime entity will work like a player entity in that, let's do that, in that it will inherit from the world physics entity thing from my engine, I guess. So I'll call this slime.py. We'll just copy this in, call this slime. And the slime does not carry a weapon, does not need that. There's this funny math right here. I don't think will I have to do this? What was the reasoning behind doing this? Scale 1 minus size 1. Oh, this is the difference between the sprite sheet size of the actual hitbox. So I think my red dot is going to be 0. Because there's no like blank edges on this thing. So I can just take that size from before, whatever that was. So our slime will be 15 by 9. 15 by 9. And then its hitbox will be similar. So 15, and it'll be 9 tall. And I mean, 10 deep is also fine, I guess. It'll be a billboard. I don't need this note anymore. So there's that. I think, oh wait, gotta change the sprite sheet too. So now it is the slime. So I can probably spawn this in places, and we'll be able to see it. But I gotta spawn it first. What am I doing? You can read the description for that. I'm working on a multiplayer game. Will there be updates on Vagrant? Probably not. A lot of the ideas of Vagrant have ended up in other stuff at this point. Actually, and the code too. So a lot of the code has been reused for other stuff, and then a lot of the ideas have been moved over to other games. So I've got not one, but 2 games that have like 2D characters with guns on them. So there's this one, and then there's also Yawnoc. So after that, I'll probably be done with that kind of format. And I'm going to reuse... So actually, this game is going to be pretty close to the ideas that I had for Yawnoc in terms of weapons. I'm not sure if I'll put the abilities on the weapons like I did in Yawnoc, but I'll have the idea where you level up your weapons. And maybe I'll put special abilities on them. It might be that they're special and that most of your abilities come from other stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm copying over to other games. And I think after Yawnoc and after, well, the multiplayer projects will probably keep going for a while, but so PixCart's in this game. But after Yawnoc, I want to probably go back to making platformers. People are complaining so much about me making platformers, like making too many platformers. So right now I'm making 0 platformers. I will have, so Yawnoc's top down. This is like this is actually 3D under the hood. PixCart's is sprite stacking. So they're all different rendering techniques, but they're all kind of top down. It's funny, this game technically, I was doing a little bit of research, and it looks like I may be able to add VR to Python games. I have to look into it more at some point, but what would be really funny is if I made this game, it's like top down and everything like that, it's technically 3D under the hood, and then I go and I make I could make it a VR game. And like you play as this player and you run around the world and you physically hold your gun and shoot at enemies instead of using a mouse. But it's like you're still playing with all the people that are playing on desktop. That would be funny. I would be very tempted to do that if there's a stable player base. But yeah, that would be funny. Anyways, so after Yawnoc though, the next game that I'll probably sell, I'll probably do a 2D game that's more artistic, I guess. So something in the line of Hue Flowing maybe, and messing around a lot with visual effects and technical art, and putting that into a game. And I want to mix it with some interesting mechanics as well. So I don't know, just a more creative type of game, because now, before people were complaining that I was making platformers, and now people are complaining that I'm making a generic game, although I don't think the Conway's Game of Life part is too generic. But everything else, in order to make it in a format that I know is fun, you can just take some of the existing ideas for that genre. Anyways. Reading chat. What am I working on? There's a description in the description. On which software did I create the floor? I'm not sure. Oh, like for the art, I did it in MS Paint. All right. So anyways, we need to spawn our slimes. So we've got our slime object. Let me check the player and see if there's anything I have to do here. So there's the netcode portion of it. Oh, and the server has to spawn the slime. I forgot about that. The client shouldn't be spawning the slime. I could test it by spawning the slime with the client, but I'm pretty sure it'll work. If it doesn't work, it's going to be really annoying to figure out. But as long as it does work, I should be doing it on the server first. So let me give you guys a quick tour of the netcode here. So we have, where is it? Netobjects.py. Here's the netcode kind of. This is just kind of boilerplate. shouldn't need to do that. I could just abstract this out so that I don't have to type this for everyone or copy it for everyone. This is the actual interesting netcode right here. So this is where I specify the networked fields, how to handle certain things. So this allows players to be teleported by the server. And then it also links the network object to the object used for rendering and stuff in the game. So the server doesn't have an instance of what this is linking to. But so like this is the code for the player. All, what is this? 28 minus 11, so 17 lines. And then here's the code for the projectiles. And there's a little bit of code in the player class as well. So you can see I pull some stuff from the shared network attributes there. I assign them here, and I do some other networking stuff right here, but it all looks super simple. So 90%, over 90% of the code in this thing right now is going to be for not netcode. So netcode's very simple. Anyways, on the server end, here's the server. It is 25 lines. All I'm doing is just spawning the players. I keep track of which players the server knows about, and I spawn them by just, because right now the 0, 0 location is in the middle of the world, so I just set their Y higher up so they're not inside the world, like inside the terrain. So I have to set the teleport flag to 1, so the player knows it's being teleported, set Y, and then set it back to 0, and the player gets teleported. That's all the server does. But the server also under the hood handles all the forwarding of the information so that the other clients can see what the other players are doing. Anyway, so right here's where I'm gonna have to somehow do the slime spawning. I'm gonna do some hacky stuff because this is gonna be temporary. Oh wait, you know what? Does the server know about the terrain of the world? It does not. That's going to be annoying. Okay, so I think what I'm going to have to do, normally I like to have a netcommon folder where I have just like this stuff in it. I'll have like the netcode stuff in it. But in this case, I think I'm going to have to put the scripts for the game onto the server as well so that it knows how the world gen works. Does this work independent of... I think the world gen does work independently. Let me see. Oh, it does it as chunks for like modern GL. That's going to be annoying. I need a representation of the world that doesn't need OpenGL to be running. Actually, I can do that as long... I think the chunk system does work. I just need to stop it from calling the stuff that builds the chunk. That's going to be a bit more annoying than I anticipated. So I have in my framework the chunk, and if I call generate geometry, it'll try to do a bunch of stuff. Does it try to do modern GL stuff initially? It wants a program for modern GL, and the thing is the server's not going to have a GUI in any way, so I can't even use modern GL. So I would need to like separate this, which is going to be annoying. Maybe what I'll do is like an alternative world generator where instead of placing things in this, I'll abstract it out so it can place it into a server chunk object, and then the server can figure that stuff out. Let's see. Do I use ChatGPT? Not really. I used it in my last year of college. I had a project where I was dealing with Java and Kotlin, and I don't use Java and Kotlin much. So there are some basic things that it could be helpful with. Like if I had questions about some specific part of the code or what some not necessarily, if it's what some specific thing does, it's faster to Google it. But if you want a certain thing to be done that's very specific, but also should be very easy, as long as you know the, I guess, basics of Kotlin, you can just ask ChatGPT. So any higher level stuff I couldn't actually use it for, and it actually got a lot of stuff wrong. But when it was kind of hard to quickly find some stuff on Google, because Google's kind of bad nowadays, ChatGPT was helping. But yeah, it's not for any actual. I was mostly using it just to figure out what is the correct, like, for example, random Android API function that I need for some specific thing. And it was kind of hard to find that on Google. What do you mean stuck with TCP? I'm not stuck with TCP. I chose to use TCP. TCP is a lot better for a lot of things. As long, like, because in most games you'll be implementing the features of TCP anyways if you use UDP. There's only a couple things where you can benefit from UDP, and I think the main one is actually like positioning. So you can disregard order on positioning, because if you get something, if something's coming in out of order, you want to disregard the old data, whereas with TCP it forces it to be in order, and that's the big thing with TCP that adds to the overhead of TCP. But in most things, you want to make sure stuff arrives in order. There's a lot of use in that to there's a lot of use in that in how you write your netcode for a lot of different things. Like, a lot of events do need to maintain their order over the network. So if you're using UDP, you have to be thinking about the specific areas where you can save some latency. But there's not that many of them. So a lot of times TCP is better. And if you have a good network anyways, where things are arriving in order most of the time, then there's not much of a difference. So there's a little bit of overhead, but I think we're talking about like 1 or 2 milliseconds. So I don't, there's no reason for me to not use TCP. Have I ever thought about collaborating with someone? I have a bunch of times recently. I did like 2 Black Farm Prod collaborations recently, and I also did one with Miz. So you can look those up. Like, my second to last video is a collaboration. How do you create 3D looking blocks in MS Paint? I'm assuming this is probably how Notch did it originally, is that you just draw your textures and you know how your textures are going to be mapped, and then you just map it with the code. So you don't need 3D modeling for blocks. Blocks are pretty simple geometry. Yeah. You feel like it's gotten a lot better than last year? What has gotten better? What framework will I use for my database? I like MongoDB, but I might actually have to not use MongoDB because MongoDB has this thing where it'll take up absurd amounts of RAM, and it will try to take pretty much all of your RAM on your server, and it's supposed to give it to other applications when the other applications request it. But I've had issues where it doesn't do that properly, and there's no way to actually get it to stop. From what I've seen, I've spent, maybe it's different nowadays, but in the past I've spent like hours trying to look into the RAM problems with MongoDB, and it's really hard to get MongoDB to release the RAM. I might end up doing something other than MongoDB. MongoDB is really easy and good for this type of thing. And actually I might be able to get away with it just because it's not very much data. And I mean, in theory, the application, like the server, shouldn't need that much RAM anyways. And I could actually do something where, can I get it to pre-allocate? Maybe? I think there might be a way to do that with Python. I don't know. Did I implement client prediction? No. I don't like client prediction. there's limited use cases. It can be useful in racing games where you can't turn very fast. But other than that, like, I don't like the way it looks in games. I prefer to see the delayed version rather than the predicted version, because that's where they actually are. You're not. It's closer to reality. It's just delayed. And realistically, 100 milliseconds is not going to look too bad. You're not really going to notice too much. Now, if you get into 300 milliseconds, like when I have those people from Malaysia trying to join my playtests, nothing against them or anything, but when it is 300 milliseconds, you get some weird effects going on. And I'm not using regional servers. And especially if that's the case where if you try to predict positions and you've got a 300 millisecond with jitter latency, it'll look terrible. So I'm not a fan of prediction. Now, on the other hand, dead reckoning. So if something is in motion and you stop getting data for some reason, you can dead reckon where you're predicting where it would be, but that's because you're not receiving any extra data. So you're not trying to predict ahead. You're trying to just predict because something cut out briefly, like they had a jitter in their connection. So for that purpose, I would be open to predictive stuff, but I still haven't really cared enough to do that yet. I might add that to PixCarts in the movement when their players are driving. That might be useful instead of just seeing them stop when it stutters. Right now I've got a decent buffer size, and actually I can't remember. PixCarts might have a dynamic buffer size where it'll change based on what your latency is or like what your jitter is. I can't remember. But you can change your buffer size so that you make sure you have enough data for playback and you don't run into dead end on the data. Is it client side like input? Yeah. Input needs to be client side. I mean, I can just show you. Input needs to be client side. You don't want to be pressing D and then waiting 100 milliseconds to move. That would feel terrible. So the games where you can get away with server side input, or like where you basically tell the server what action you want to take, is those games like MOBAs where you like right click somewhere in the world and your player will walk there. Because to have a 100 millisecond delay on walking around is like to walk to where you want to go is not that bad. But because then you only have that delay right when you first tell it to move. Whereas if you have that delay when you just press D or you try to shoot, that would be okay. The shooting maybe you could get away with if it were like more ability based instead of the way it is like this, where it's literally as soon as you click it starts spamming bullets, and as soon as you stop shooting. If it were like an ability that you cast like every 2 seconds, like most MMOs, you can get away with waiting for the server to know that you try to use that ability. And another reason why I can't depend on that is because I'm not going to have regional servers. It's not going to be like 50 to 100 milliseconds for most people. A lot of people, it's going to be like 200 milliseconds. So like waiting a fifth of a second for all of your input will feel absolutely terrible. So it's a lot better to just let the players do their stuff and have the server check it. I'm not going to be too picky with the anti-cheat on this one. I'm just going to make sure that the players can't ruin the experience of other players. So you can ruin the experience for yourself, but I'm going to make it so that like you can't like hack and give yourself like a ton of items, for example. You can't teleport all over the world. So I'm going to do stuff like that. So basically anything that would break the economy, I'm going to put up the anti-cheat for. But I think the way you will be able to have an aim bot. Oh no, someone's got a bot that makes sure their cursor is actually on the enemy. Oh no. The other one is that you could make it so that you don't get hit by any bullets and stuff like that. Which you'll be able to like report players if they're doing something like that, but it's not going to be affecting your experience too much. It's not going it's not going to ruin the experience for other players. So they'll just have a slightly more optimized like marginally more optimized progression. So, and especially towards the end game where things really start to, where your actions start to affect the economy more, if you're hacking to try to give yourself those minor advantages, you're not going to be really impacting the economy. It's just you're ruining it for yourself and taking all the fun out. Yeah, so that's how I planned on handling it. You wish you knew multiplayer? It's not that complicated. If you learn Sokka, it's literally just send this message, decode it, and do whatever you want with it. So it's about abstracting things from that. So you just learn the basics of sockets, and it's not too difficult. Now, if you want to actually run a multiplayer game, you need like servers and stuff, and that's where it starts to cost money. So I wanted to get into multiplayer stuff long before I actually did, but I didn't because I didn't have any servers. So I was like, why would I make a multiplayer game if I don't have any servers? So I had to wait for that reason. So I can see that, especially if you're younger, if there's a financial reason why you wouldn't want to get into it. You're making a single-player 3D game using Pygame CE and OpenGL. I would use ModernGL, I'm assuming you're using PyOpenGL. I'd use ModernGL instead. It's a lot easier. But yeah, that's how this game works. Is it's Pygame for the window and the input and the sounds, which there aren't any yet, but for the sounds, and I think I do texture loading with Pygame as well. But ModernGL handles all of the 3D rendering and like the shaders and everything. So this is the first game I have that's fully ModernGL. Most of my games won't be like this, but like Yawnoc, for example, it will be rendered in Pygame and then shaders in ModernGL. This is actually all ModernGL, so that's why it's actually 3D. Yeah, so there's different ways to go about it. For my proper 2D games, it makes a lot more sense to do Pygame because it's a lot easier to like handle rendering and stuff. Yeah. Do I use a tile map to make my worlds? I just have a world generator. It is on a grid, but yeah. Where am I hosting my servers? It's the same one that's DaFluffyPotato.com. That one is where I host my servers for my playtests normally. Can I do LAN multiplayer though? I can't. That's what this is. Like, if I got another computer right now, I could connect to this server with this game. So I could do LAN in theory. In practice, that's not going to be the case because it's going to be this type of game that you're not going to want to really do on LAN. It's going to be more of an experience for, I guess, a larger community. It's difficult to make 3D games in Pygame plus ModernGL. It's easier than pretty much every other way that doesn't involve a game engine, I would say. And also, once you have a framework, a lot of the things are easier than even using a game engine. My framework is very bare bones right now, but I could see someday in the future making it to the point where it's a lot easier than a lot of game engines because I'm using Python. Is code on GitHub? Yes, technically, but it's not public. It might be public someday, but not now. Anyways, back to making slimes. So like I said, I have to fix the server needs a representation of the world, which is going to be interesting. So I need to be able to call world_gen, and then instead of, wait, you know what? I can make like a dummy chunk object, and because this generator just calls like your add custom on the chunk in place. That's all it does. So I can actually just hand this a different object. This is the amazing thing about Python, is that you don't have to worry about your types. So the chunk is expected to be the chunk from PyTDF, which is the engine, I guess. And then I can just make my own thing that has the place and add custom functions without having to worry about typing, and throw it in there and it'll do its thing. So that's what I'll do. I'm gonna have a server code folder, and this one actually does not need, well, this one needs to not be shared with the client or with the players, because if I add an anti-cheat in there, that should not be public. And I will not stream writing the anti-cheat probably. I don't know. So server scripts. So this is exclusive to the server. And then I'll want, I need a chunk thing. So I need a dummy chunk. It's funny because I was supposed to be adding slimes and I have to go on this massive detour because I didn't, Gamedev. So we have our chunk and it needs this specific function. So we'll make it an init thing. And I believe there was XY scale 16, so self dot XY scale equals 16. We'll do that. I don't remember if that's a, let me see what the it's stored as in the framework. No, that's the wrong thing. Chunk. So what attributes does it have? Yeah, it's XY size. So it's blocks and custom. So self dot blocks equals that, self.custom equals that, and then I need to slip over into the world generator and you can take a peek. This is the world gen, by the way. So 34 to 67. So there's like around 30 lines of world generation code. That gives us that island we got. Oh, actually, there's also this stuff too, some utilities. So there's stuff for placing islands as well. Right now, I have it hard coded to generate like a certain amount of chunks around the spawn. When I do dynamic chunk loading, the generation will actually be there to have other islands, and it'll like be an island-based thing. You can go to different islands. Each island will look kind of like an island. So that's all in this one file of 67 lines. So I need the world gen thing. Oh, this uses the they use the unique element thing. I think I need to make a class for this so that I can access the other stuff. So for that, I need a unique element thing. I'm gonna steal this, go to the server, and that'll be from scripts.misc, and we'll do that, and then we can say class server. That is a unique element, and def init self super.init, and then we can do self.known players, self.host, def run, self. We can do all this stuff, and this will be self.host. Now we can copy all this stuff, and where's my dots? My dots went missing. And there we go. Now we have an object, and we can do server.run at the bottom, and then with that, I can now access other stuff. So for example, if I want, I can do from scripts dot, well, this is what I need. Scripts.world.worldgen import worldgen from scripts dot, oh, this one needs to be server scripts. Server scripts dot chunk. Did I get, oh, I've actually put this under data. That needs to go up here. Hello. What is the best way to move this? I think I have to like close this stuff. That's annoying. I did not mean to put that under data. So server scripts dot chunk import chunk. So now we have our chunk. I can do self.e.worldgen. So I'll do worldgen. We just do that, and I can access that from anywhere. Using my element system. So now the world gen needs certain features implemented for my chunk here. So I need add custom in place. So I'll just copy this thing here so that I know the signature. So def, and then I'll cut that out, and then we'll say self, and then this will be block ID. And then that's presumably the position I don't know if that's in the chunk or in the world. That is the question. So we can probably figure that out pretty easily. I have way too many files open. XYZ. So chunk block is world position. XYZ is the chunk position. So the chunk needs to also know its position. So position. See. All right. So to place a block, this is going to be stupidly simple. So self.blocks tuple of the position equals. I think I can actually just do block ID. I think that's literally it. It's a lot more complicated than the other one, but because this is just a server representation of the data, I don't need to do a whole lot. So now we also need add custom. So this is going to be the custom. Wait. I don't need this thing. Another annoying thing is that this instantiating, does it? Wait. Hold on, the core tree. Where's the world? Oh, this thing needs to reference the world. But only for, ooh. Interesting. So I need to remove the part, right now this is instantiating something, or using something instantiated with modern JL. This object right here is a modern JL object that I can render. So that should not be there. That's hard coded though. I'm gonna change that later. Anyways, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move world to being a keyword argument and set it to none. And then I can just search for this thing. And over here we call this, we want to say world equals that, and then we go back over here and we say if world, then that, else chunk object add custom, and we'll just say tree, and then we will give it its location. That's all we need. So this is going to be like the other one, where it's def add custom. Wait, do I have custom self block ID position self.custom append. I'll just do. The server is not gonna care about any of the custom stuff for a while, so I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna like the whole custom thing's gonna have to be reworked later. I need to move them into blocks if I do any type of world editing stuff. Anyways, so the server can now spawn chunks, and the server needs a representation of the world. So now we create another world thing, and we can go into server. We want to take this, wait, no, this, class world def init self super dot init, and we want it to be a unique element. That way everything has access to it. And actually this one should probably contain the world gen. So realistically, if I go over to server, it will steal the world gen. We don't need that there. That can go over to here now. We want that here. And then we'll just call self.worldGen equals that. And def generate chunk. So I'll do hard code this for now. So the way this will work, I'll need from .chunk import chunk. So our chunk object equals chunk, and we need the position. The XY scale is correct by default, but actually I'll set that anyways. Our position will be that position, and then self dot, that's not how you spell worldgen, dot, and then this one will be able to do, wait, is this, oh yeah, that is the one from script. So I can use generate chunk here, copy that, just do that, let's take that. Now the world will leave the world as none, that way it won't try to instantiate anything. I'm worried that it might try to instantiate modern GL, which could end up being a problem. Anyways, so yeah, there's that, and then this is going to be, I believe, what is that? What is this? Oh, that, okay. That's literally just, it has access to that information. I don't know why it's passing that along, but whatever, I'll copy it anyways. So this will place the stuff into the chunk. And I'll do self.chunks equals that. No, not that, that. And self.chunks tuple position equals chunk object. So next step is to be able to look up tiles in specific locations. And this will be important for spawning things. This is the only thing I'm going to need to spawn things, actually. So I actually should have, no, not there. The other world. This world. I have like three world.pies. I think I can just use this stuff. So I can do it by pixel location, but then I can also do it by that. I think I'll use both. So I need the chunk size, and then I need the block size. So I can store those. Boop. And we'll say, let's be hard coded. Chunk size equals 16, self.blocks, no, dot block size equals 14. All right. Now with all of that, I do not have that information. Wait. Block chord offset. I need to make sure that gets copied in. Chunk. I need that. Oh, self.position equals list position. Actually, that can be a tuple, because that is not ever going to change, or it shouldn't, unless someone's moving around chunks. That would be very funny, though. Is it XY scale or size? Wait. Size. Okay, I'm not reading stuff correctly. There we go. So XY size, and now over in this one, it needs to be that. All right. So now the server can generate the world and know what is where. And so if you're curious, the reason why the server doesn't have to tell the client what the world is because the world generation is deterministic. So I'll change it later. So there are some things where the server just randomly generates a value for like islands, so it will determine how they're generated. So that at least has to be communicated, and you can't just essentially look around the world based on just knowing what would be generated there mathematically. But yeah, so the way it works is that mathematically you can determine independently what the world's going to generate, and it's going to be the same no matter what's running the code. And like I said, there will be the island variation that the server selects, but I haven't done that yet. So right now, the server and the client just generate the exact same thing. But let's go ahead and do the world gen. So I don't need that. What I need is from server scripts dot world import world. So I need self.world equals world. And then that will let me do for x in range. I always forget this stuff. I want to do the actual range thing instead of 0 to whatever it says. So I can, well, you can do like -3 to 3. And if you call list on that. So that's the annoying thing about range, is that it's not inclusive. It's inclusive on one end, but not the other. So if you want it to actually do that, you gotta increase it by 1. It's a little bit weird. So I can do like -3. How many chunks am I actually doing on the client? Where do I generate this? Is this in the world? No, not that one. This one, I think. No, not that one. It's the third one. Wherever that is. Scripts, world.py. This one's handling it, I think. Oh, is it dynamically doing it already? Oh, it is dynamically doing it, but it's doing it in a radius of 2. So I'll do a radius of 3. The things you forget that you've done. Alright. You know what? The chunks are 16 blocks. It actually might be going pretty far out. So I'll do 6 to 7. So that's a radius of 6. For y in range -6 to 7. Actually, that should be z technically. Self.world.generate chunk, and then we just give it our x and z, and that will generate it. So, and then just for testing sake, we can do print self.world.chunks, and then we can see what things get generated. Provided it doesn't crash, which it probably will. So we can go ahead and kill the server. Start it. It crashed. Yay! Okay, so mutil. So it needs some mathematical utils. That's pretty simple. From server scripts dot from server scripts dot miss dot util import mutil. So these are mathematical utilities. There's a lot of stuff in here that's just useful. So I just need to instantiate this. Boop, like that. And does that fix our issue? It generated. So here's all our chunks. You can see all our chunk objects here. It generated the 6 by, or technically the radius is, well, yeah, the radius is 6, but it's going to be 13 by 13 because it includes 0, 0. So all of that's generated, which means that we can select a spot for the slime to spawn. Yay. If I run the game, you can see there's no differences. In theory, the server's got the same data as the clients on this. Yeah. What was the basic logic for the robot centipedes? As in, how do they work? I mean, they just follow the player and swerve. They have like an angular component to their movement, and then the angle just varies. It's like running on a sine wave with respect to the player's position. Like the offset is on a sine wave, so it'll like swerve in and out. Your vector calculation is flipping out whenever your cursor gets too close to the player. I mean, I don't know if normally it's going to be a bit weird because that's just how math works, and I mean there's no better way to do it than this. But I don't know if you've got some other issues. That might just be a math problem. You just use ATAN too on the difference between the mouse position and the player position. The only thing is if your coordinates are bad, you get some. If your coordinates are not correct, so like I have to convert the player's position to screen space coordinates to do this. So I have the player's coordinates in 3D space, and then I have to like reproject it onto the like I have to normally the shader computes the projection, but then I have to compute the projection on the CPU so that I know where the player is going to be on the screen, so that I can do the calculation for the rotations. So the 3D stuff makes it complicated, but works out fine. Do I know about Rain World? Yes. That's kind of that's a style of animation that I use for the centipedes. Yeah. How much does it cost to have a multiplayer game for servers and whatnot? Well, here's the funny thing, is that for a lot of game engines, if you use their tools for it, they'll make you run versions of the game engine on your server. I think Godot's not too bad. They have like a headless version or something where it's actually not too slow. But there's a lot of bloat in most of the thing. Like if you just make like a multiplayer game with Unity or Unreal, from what I've seen, a lot of times there's a lot of bloat. And you'll end up with your servers, like, you'll be paying, like, I don't know, $10-15 a month to have a server for 10 people. But with my stuff, like PixCarts, I can run a server with, like, 100 players, I think, on it. Is that what I calculated? It was like 100 or 200 players on it for $10 a month. So a lot of it depends on how you code your stuff. And that's one of the major advantages of the way I'm doing my stuff, is that the server costs are going to be super low. And I can just throw it on. I'm going to throw it onto the server that I'm already running my website on. So I'm not paying any additional money from what I was already doing. So it's a pretty good deal. And actually with this game, I'm going to be able to get even better performance than on PixCarts, because I can localize the player updates. Because in PixCarts, you have to send the location of every single player to every single other player constantly, so that their map is updated. So even if they're not on the screen, they still need to know where the other players are, so they can have an accurate map of where all the players are. But on this one, I don't have to do that. So I can have like, for a lot of the game, I don't have to be, like, if I'm just sitting here like this, not doing anything, the server will just kind of send updates as to maybe what the enemies in the area are doing. So if, like, maybe you claim the area and there are no enemies, the server might not actually have to even send you anything. Because, and then if no one else is around, the server doesn't have to forward that data to the other players. So as long as I optimize for that, since it's going to be a big world, I can handle, I would think, there might be an issue of just concurrent connections. I've not, like, stress tested that. I know that on PixCarts, I tested like 30 of them, and I could handle like 30 connections on PixCarts, which was funny. I have like some screenshots of testing that. That was an absolute mess, because you gotta like run 30 instances of the game on one computer. But yeah, so on PixCarts I could do like 30 instances, but like, so I know I can at least do that amount, which is a good amount. I mean, like on a Minecraft server, if you want to have 30 concurrent players, you're gonna be spending like $30 a month, whereas I can spend 10, and I can probably handle over 100. So I'm hoping that with this game, if I properly optimize it, it'll be able to handle like a few hundred. And when I'm at that scale, if there are a few hundred people on one server, and actually I think just because I suspect there's going to be some reason with concurrent connections where I'm going to have to upgrade maybe to a $30 a month thing if I've got like hundreds of players. But in theory, I think I should be able to handle it. But yeah, if I'm getting like hundreds of concurrent players on like $30 a month, I could literally just set up a Patreon for the game and then self-fund it pretty easily, and not even have to do like any kinds of in-game purchases. Now, realistically, what I'd probably do is something. Well, this is the type of game where you really don't want any type of in-game purchasable items. Maybe I would do like skins for some stuff. I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure how I would do it, because I really don't want it to be any mechanical difference if I do something like that. But that's only if people really like the game anyways, because otherwise it's not worth even setting up something like that to try to monetize it. But yeah, so the easy first step is, if there's like hundreds of players, the stopgap thing is just set up a Patreon. Get like 10 people to donate $3 a month, and the server's paid for. And that's what I do for Hitblock, which is my Beat Saber service where people compete for like scores and stuff. So that one brings in like $100 a month. The server cost is like 20, even though there's like tens of thousands of users, and it pays for itself easily, and I get a little bit extra. So there's ways to handle that kind of stuff. I have a Pygame tutorial on my channel if you're looking for one. Please don't use vocal fry. What? Are you talking about just the way I talk? Are you complaining about my voice? Nuika. Isn't that... What is that game? Oh, that's what it was. I was thinking of Noida and Nikra. There's a game called Noida and there's a game called Nikra, which were the things that were crossing my mind when you said that. No, I have not tried Noika. Is the custom game engine also written in Python? Yes. Reading chat still. What do you run /buy a server? I use Linode. They've been pretty good lately, or they used to be better. Then they got acquired, and then like every year they move the servers, and which turns them off. Because before they got acquired, I think I straight up had a server running for 3 years without ever having to turn it off. Like their uptime's pretty good too. So it's been a pretty good deal using them, but hasn't been as good lately. It might be just some hiccups because they're going through the process of being acquired, so maybe it's gonna calm down now, hopefully. And the hiccups are once a year I have to turn off my server and turn it back on so they can migrate it. And that'll be like literally it automatically happens as soon as I turn it off, so, and they just tell me that it needs to be done. So it's like I get like an extra 15 minutes of downtime that I have to handle or something like that. But yeah, they've been pretty good. I thought about getting set up with their affiliate links and stuff because I actually use them and I've been using them for years. Probably more so than anything else that I've promoted on my YouTube channel. Like Linode would be something that I'd be willing to promote just because I've been using it for so long. And their affiliate payout is actually pretty good too. I thought I saw something where they actually pay you in cash for some stuff, which would be a pretty good deal for me. But I also need to look into. Well, I think they even give you a better deal if you use credits, like if you take credits as payment. So the affiliate thing, I get paid credits so that I can just keep using Linode without having to pay much. So if I'm actually spending a lot on servers, I can get just a lot of credits. Like, it's a lot you can get. I could probably get like thousands of dollars in credits. Because when they credit it to themselves, you get a much better deal than if you're just paying cash. Yeah, but after a certain point, it's like, what do I do with the credits? How hard is code physics and Python? I have videos on that. It's not difficult for 2D. The same principle applies to 3D as well. So if you've seen my videos about how you do 2D physics in Pygame for like rectangles, I'm using the exact same thing here, and this is 3D physics. So you can see I can collide on like all sides, top, on the sides, both sides. So I got the three-dimensional physics going here. You literally just added a dimension to the algorithm that I had before. I could do like 4D physics easily, 4 or 5 infinite D physics with the algorithm I use. It only works for like rectangular axis aligned shapes though. But it's really fast and stable for those types of things. And it's just a really good algorithm. I like it. What's going on with the block on the left? I don't know what you're talking about. Can I make a living with YouTube in my games? Technically, yes. Where I live right now, I would be making enough to live, not enough to save money. So that's why I'm working a job too. It's because I want to, like right now, I save most of the money I make. And that's the way I want things to be. So I would not be okay with just getting by working for myself. And just getting by where I live is like you need. Actually, I could probably do more than just getting by. I might be able to do twice just getting by. So my estimate right now is I could probably make $50,000 to $60,000 a year, maybe, if I did YouTube and game dev full time, which is a pretty good deal. But you can make like for the same skills, you can make like twice as much working in the software industry. So that's why I'm mixing the two. So I have an arrangement where I only work 32 hours a week so that I have a fair bit of extra time to still work on my stuff. So it's a good way to split the difference. I got a stable income, and then I can also save most of what I make. But I can keep working on my games, and maybe one day end up getting to the point where I'm making enough to justify working entirely for myself. Another option is that if I save up enough money where I can live off of investments, then just getting by. Actually, to any degree, like there's a certain threshold where if you have enough saved up and you're making returns on your investments where you've got the exponential growth going, you can have a job where you're just getting by so that your investments can keep growing, and that's also fine. So that's something I would also consider later. So a lot of it comes down to numbers. But yeah, I can technically live off of YouTube and game dev. I'm just not. I might someday. Another option is to move to which I've considered, is moving to another country where things are more affordable. So instead of spending $30,000 a year on living expenses, I could spend 10 by living in a place like Costa Rica. So there's options. I think a lot of it, what I'll do will depend on, like, for example, my estimates right now are very much estimates as to what I could make if I worked full time, because I have no idea how well Yawnoc will sell. I have not sold a game since 2019, like released a game that costs money, and that's where my main income source would be. Because YouTube, it pays decent. If I did it full time, I could make maybe 20 grand a year off of it, on top of the game devs, like while focusing on game dev stuff. So like the type of videos I make now, if I did that full time, like making games and stuff, the YouTube portion of my income would be like 20 grand maybe. I don't know. So like right now, my YouTube analytics, it's like what? Last month, like there was a time where I hit like $700 for 28 days in just YouTube ad revenue. Sponsorships right at this point get me like about go for around $1,000, it seems. So if you mix those two, maybe take a couple sponsorships, do ad revenue, Patreon, that comes out to around 20 grand from YouTube, which is not enough for my core living expenses. So I would be dependent on actually selling games, which is where I would expect most of the income would come from. So right now, my estimate for Yawnoc, Google, well, there's people have made tools based on the number of wish lists you have, to look at like the median income median revenue for games. And Yawnoc right now is sitting at like, what was it, like 15,000, but net revenue. But then I think it'll be like 30 by the time I release it. And that's the median. If you go like top 10%, it's like over 100,000. If you go bottom 10%, it'll be like 5,000. So there's a huge range in there. So my initial goal was 10,000 from Yawnoc, which is what I'm hoping for. And it looks like there's a pretty good chance that I hit it. So that's something I'm excited about. But yeah, so if you add like, I don't know, 2 games like Yawnoc a year, if I were working full time, plus 20 grand from YouTube, that does add up to like 50 to 60, it seems, which is a good deal. Now, if Yawnoc can make like 30 grand, and it's a project I'm only going to put a few hundred hours into, I could reasonably do multiple of those a year. What would actually probably happen if I went full time is I'd do bigger projects that would sell more. But yeah, so there's a serious possibility that I could actually, like, that I would actually switch to doing game dev and YouTube full time. A lot of it will depend on how Yawnoc does. It's just annoying because the cost of living in Florida has gone insane in the last couple of years because of insurance and property taxes, and the housing market exploded in 2020. So things were like half as expensive just a couple of years ago. So like if it weren't for all of the like housing inflation and stuff that happened during COVID, because that doesn't translate really to increased prices for games that much, because games still sell, like indie games are still selling in the same range. Games are still like $60. Some companies are trying to push 70, but people don't like that. So those prices are not going up. So that's stuff's falling behind with respect to inflation. But if it weren't for all of that stuff that happened during COVID, I would probably be working for myself right now. So I don't know. It's like I said, a lot of that stuff will depend on how Yawnoc does, and I'll kind of go from there. Like right now, it would be a really dumb idea to try to do full time working for myself, even like when I haven't even sold a game in 5 years. So it's good to get those numbers first, and then I might want to do a second game just to get a feel for what the norm might be. Now, if Yawnoc completely takes off, I would only do one game before making that decision. So yeah, depends a lot on how it does. Game dev on Linux is okay. You're thinking about developing games, but right now you're using full Linux. Actually, I find it nicer to develop on Linux. The only reason I don't develop on Linux is because most of the people playing my games are going to be on Windows. So if there's like a rare bug that's specific to Windows, I have a much higher chance of catching it if I'm developing on Windows. So it just makes more sense to develop on the platform that my players are primarily going to be using. And then also for like live streaming and stuff, there's stuff, actually maybe not nowadays, but there's stuff I was using where I can't run it on Linux. And like, for example, I don't think my editing software can run on Linux, so there's like stuff that I need Windows for. If I could, I would entirely switch to Linux. I prefer it a lot more for the development experience. It's a lot nicer. Yes, this is Pygame. It's Pygame in Modern GL. So the rendering is done in Modern GL, but Pygame handles the window, the input, and it will handle the sounds and some other stuff. Do you think the sprites would look better with the billboard effect? The player is billboarded. If I'm running around, you can look at the perspective of the player. It's billboarded. It's completely flat. There's no 3D, like when I'm running to the side, you can see the side of all these blocks here and the trees and stuff. There is no side thing on the player. It's a flat image. So this is billboarded, angled towards the camera. Actually, wait, you know what? Is it not angled? I can't tell if it's rotating towards the camera or not. I don't think it is. I'm gonna have to fix that later. It's just flat right now. It is technically a billboard, it's just not a billboard facing. I thought I did set it to face the camera, but that's fine. I think it did at one point, I might have broken it. But yeah, this is a flat image for the player. A lot of the enemies and stuff are going to be the same way. But the hitbox does have a third dimension to it, so if I stand out here, you can see I can stand like this, because there's a third dimension to my hitbox. I can also stand like that. I need to add a shadow too, so you know where the player is, because right now it just looks like I'm floating. The lighting affects the player, so I can step into the shade and the player gets darker, but yeah. Can't they work through Wine or Proton? I haven't tried. I don't want to mess with that. It could be a hassle. I think for something like my video editing software, it probably wouldn't, because there's a lot of driver stuff. There's a lot of low-level stuff going on in that I don't think would work. And I feel like I would get some random crashes. Even if it did work, I'd probably get some random crashes that would be really annoying. So like if it crashes while I'm editing, that would, and I lose a ton of progress, that'd be obnoxious. Or especially if something corrupts, it's not really worth risking to me. Um, uh, so yeah, I would not make more money making games with a game engine, because I work faster without game engines at this point. Well, in this case, not quite, because my framework's not quite there yet. But like when I'm doing Pygame stuff for 2D, I work way faster without an engine than with one. There's a reason I beat all the people that are using game engines and game jams. Um, uh, this is a 3D game. It's OpenGL. Well, it's modern GL, OpenGL, and Pygame. So like I said, Pygame's input window, sound effects. Shift the train hue based on height, just a tiny bit to see if some blocks are higher or lower. I was gonna do like probably outlines or something at some point, so that you can see. I'm also gonna add like grass. So there's going to be lots of ways that you'll be able to tell that the terrain is like the certain terrain's elevated. So that, yeah, there'll be ways to tell. Yeah, and a lot of times you can see just from moving side to side, because you can see those parts right there. But yeah, so there'll be like grass, kind of in the style of the trees, and it'll be placed all over the place. And that will help make the terrain more visible. And then I'm going to experiment with doing outlines. So if there's like an outline there, you can know that it drops off. I might also try to flip around the lighting so the shadows are casted behind, so you can see that there's a shadow coming behind the terrain. That will tell you too. You're currently working on web development and considering migrating to Gamedev because it's truly captivating to you, but where you see most lack of job opportunities? Well, here's an interesting thing to think about. So there are various opinions out there. Most people in software will say that AI is not a risk, but if you think about it, to me, if you're in web development, especially like front-end web development, that's the field within software that is most at risk to being impacted by artificial intelligence. Not that it would replace all the jobs, but the amount of work that needed to be done could be substantially reduced, because I think a lot of it could be done by AI at some point. I mean, people are already experimenting with that stuff. So game development to me is one of the most, like, to me, if AI can actually do game development, then it can do pretty much anything. And so to me, game development is one of the last things to go. So that's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about, is that like, so in game development, you have to be able to navigate a virtual world in order to test your stuff to make sure it's working. So the thing that people have been doing lately with AI is to like iterate on stuff that it generates by having it evaluate itself and try to look for its own mistakes and correct them, which I've seen people do for like some programming type things. Like they'll be able to run the code, see if it errors out and fix it based on the error, for example. But in game development, you have to be able to, like, well, web development's sort of like this, where you have to look at the web page, which is a lot more easier for AI to understand, but the AI has to be able to navigate and understand the 3D world to properly test it and make sure that the changes are working. There's no way for it to iterate, well, it depends on the game, but for a lot of games, it cannot iterate on what it's writing unless it understands how to navigate a 3D world, needs to understand the reasoning behind it, and do pretty much, well, a lot of like games are kind of simulations, so it has to be able to do a lot of the types of thought processes something would have to go through in the real world. The only difference is motor skills. So you could, if AI is smart enough to design a game and test it and iterate on it, then it would be smart enough to do pretty much anything you wanted it to do in the real world, unless for some reason it can't figure out motor skills, which I don't think is. I think we've already figured that out. I don't know. I could be way off on that. I have no idea, but that's my guess. Now, game development, though, is the industry itself is running into issues right now where a lot of people are not liking AAA games at the moment because they keep trying to spend money making graphics look nice. So there is that risk to it. So like right now, it's not in a great situation. And then also you get treated worse and you get paid less, which is why I don't work in that industry. Now, if I were a solo game developer, then I get the best of both worlds in theory, job stability, job stability in the face of innovation, and then also not having to deal with the bad working conditions of working for a company in the industry. Yeah. The other thing that would have to be one like the last things to go, I think, if AI were to ever get to a point where it could handle software, and this could be like decades out. It's hard to tell at this point. Is anything relating to government or safety, where and this is what my actual job right now is it's safety stuff for space, or safety stuff for rockets, like the space rockets. So they can't have AI writing that stuff unless it's proven that it's like way safer than having humans write it. Yeah. Reading chat again. You can't think of how you could write a voxel engine in Unity or Godot. Probably would be more of a hassle than with OpenGL DirectX. Yeah, there's some amount of hassle to it, I think. There's tutorials out there for the different engines and stuff that will show you how to do it. So it's definitely doable. I think like there's definitely like you can look up Godot tutorials for Minecraft, for example. You can definitely do it. But you still have to I think you have to generate your meshes yourself and stuff like that anyways. So a lot of those core concepts you use, if you're doing it with OpenGL, you end up having to do in a game engine, except you're doing it through the game engine's abstractions. So it ends up being that there's not too much of a difference between making this type of game in a game engine and without one. The game engines help a lot with just like basic 3D model stuff, your transform. Actually, some of those features are very useful in these types of games still, but so your transforms and your animations and all sorts of stuff. Your rendering pipeline, stuff like that. What if a single block of water acts like a void, creating another level whenever you go down into it? That sounds like what I'm doing with Pix cards later. But no, you're gonna be riding on boats in the water in this game. ChatGPT would be nice. It would also help you. No, I just talked about this earlier. ChatGPT is not useful for me. The stuff that I do, there's some occasional things where maybe it's useful, especially where documentation is lacking. I've found that some things that I can get ChatGPT to piece things together that I might have missed in documentation. So that's primarily what I use it for, if I ever use it. But I have not used it in months, I don't think. So normally it's faster to Google things, and then for actually writing code, ChatGPT cannot write the types of stuff that I write. It can do simple things, like And here's the thing with that is that maybe it can save you some boilerplate in C++, for example, where you're trying to do a simple thing, but it takes a lot of steps because it's C++, and so there's a fair bit of code. But for a lot of things in Python, it's going to be that in game development with Python, is that every line of code does so much that you're not actually saving much time trying to get ChatGPT to do it. And in my case, you're losing a lot of time. Now, what it can do with Python well is things like you give it some data and tell it to graph some certain feature or something like that. And that's some very basic operation doing some lines with matplotlib that if you actually work in that field, you probably have all that stuff memorized. So you can just write it off the top of your head. But it can do that pretty well and save you some time there. So there are some like data analysis type things that ChatGPT could save you some time on if you're new. But like for game development with Python, I don't feel like there's any way that it could really help me. Just ask ChatGPT for create or grass texture. You can use in OpenGL. Well, that's a little bit disappointing. Yeah, although that's not what it's meant for. There are some models made for, I think, generating like game assets, which are slightly better, but it's still like the inconsistencies makes it pretty bad. That's why I've not even really considered, like it's very obvious still that game asset generation would not be, like AI generated game assets would not be of use for me, especially with my style. What do you work as primarily? Well, my job is software engineering. I work on, like I mentioned, rocket safety software. GTA 6 isn't released and we already have Sora. What was Sora again? Wait, is Sora the video generator? I already forgot. Sora AI. Text to video, yeah. Well, so yeah, I have seen, what was it? I did see an experiment where someone made like a platformer type thing that was fully AI generated, and it was all in the model, so that the world was simulated in the model, rather than writing code. And that's actually an approach that can work to a degree for like simple games. Probably, I think the limit would probably be hit around like a lot of types of stuff you'd see in game jams pretty much. And the reason you'll run into issues, maybe there's like architecture stuff I could do to fix this, but like for example, if you've got a multiplayer game, you can't have a model determining the rules for a game based on a prompt, because when you try to network it, there will be the rigidness of the rules in a multiplayer game, like the mechanics, are incredibly important. Things need to act precisely a specific way. Whereas in a single player game, maybe you can walk into some area that an AI generates arbitrarily, and that's the type of thing that the AI is better at, is the more subjective stuff. At least the models we have right now. So like large language models, for example, language is more subjective. So there's a lot more things that are valid results. But once very specific rules, so like, yeah, if you've got like your Factorios or your multiplayer games, it's gonna absolutely fall apart. So those things can only go so far. Now, those types of generator, like if you do entirely in-model game generations, I could see it maybe working better for the types of like single-player AAA games, especially like the walking simulator type ones, where it's mostly about the environment and maybe there's a couple things you interact with or fight with, and so those types of things, maybe you could have like an entirely in-model game with no code. But most of the games that people play, I think, there's not a reasonable way for AI to generate them in the near future unless we hit the singularity. So yeah, things like Sora, and the reason I brought that up with Sora was because Sora is video generation, and that's kind of a component of the concept I've seen where people have been trying to generate video games without any code, where it's just like the model takes in input and generates video output. One does not simply know the okay, but I've had to graph so many things for my work that you can know some of them. So you can know your you can do your import from matplotlib, your pyplot, and you can do plot.plot, and you know it's your arguments are your values for each axis, and then you can do your dot label and your dot legend, or no, it's the label equals and your dot legend. I think that's what it was, yeah. So a lot of the basic arguments you can just have memorized. Yeah, but yeah, the more complex ones, I definitely do not. I don't know. But I think if you ask ChatGPT to graph it, it's probably going to use the basic ones. So it'll do your plot, it'll do your pyplot.plot and pyplot.show. And it'll be doing that basic stuff. Have I used find? So actually that's a funny thing, is that find, when I was doing my senior design project and I was trying to figure out the random obscure stuff with the Android API, I was using find a lot instead of ChatGPT, because I found that I wrote about that around that time, and that was a lot more useful. I forgot, this find like cited sources or something? I can't remember. But yeah, find was pretty useful. And actually, I mean, yeah, there are use cases where that's kind of useful with documentation. Is it possible to port Pygame modern GL games to the web? I don't know about the modern GL part. You can do the Pygame part though. With I still don't know how to pronounce it. It's PYG bag. Do I ever consider using Smack Studio Pixel? I don't know what that is. Source of text video, yep. Do I plan on making this a full game? Well, I'm just working on it this weekend, and then I'm going to stop and work on Yawnoc for a while, and then I'll probably come back to this. So if you notice, the game design for this is basically that other multiplayer game I had from like 2 years. Is it 2 years ago? The one that was like underground, and there was like the floating eyeballs, and you shot at them. It's going to be the same thing. It's the same idea, but 3D instead of 2D, and then instead of space, it's the ocean. So that's that idea. Anyways, I really need to get back to adding slimes. So I need to add slimes. Fortunately, so this is where the fun stuff's I'm going to be doing some netcode here. So the server knows about all the players. So every 100 milliseconds right now, I have it iterating through all the players. And I can get the player positions, so I know where in the world the player is. And then I can spawn some slimes around it. So all I gotta do is, for each player, let's import random here. Realistically, I'm going to have like another class or something I do this stuff in. I don't want to have it hard coded into the main loop in the long run, but this is just temporary. So for each player, if random.random is less than, let's say, so 0.1 would mean once every second. So we'll say one in every, actually no, let's do 0.1 for now, because we want a lot of slimes to spawn. So every second, on average, a slime will be attempted, it will attempt to spawn a slime for each player. And it will be based on the player. It's going to be based on even players that are disconnected. I need to actually hook up the disconnects later. I actually have this thing where I can set up a hook on the disconnect to remove the player, but I'll have to do that later. Anyways, so we'll do this, and then we can attempt to spawn a slime. And then what I will do is, actually for the server's version of the world, I'll add a thing where I can find a spawn point So def find spawn self, and then I can maybe choose an area. So position, I'll call this an origin, and then we'll give it a range. No, I can't call it range because that's a keyword thing. So we'll just say radius equals, and then this will be in, should it be pixels or blocks? Let's do pixels. So we'll say in 500, 300 pixels for now. That's good for testing. Later on, it's going to be much larger. So we pick a random spot with respect to the origin. So we're gonna need math for this. Import math, and we need a random spot with respect to the origin. So we'll do, and we want to try like maybe 10 times for I in range 10. We'll try to spawn something. We'll just keep picking locations until we figure it out. So we need a XY location. So our middle value can be 0, but we'll do math.cosine of, we can pick a random angle. So angle is math.random. Oh, no, not math. Angle equals random.random by, I don't have random in, give me random. Do random.random times math.pi by 2, math.cosine of the angle by the radius, math.sine of the angle by the radius, and then we add our origin, and that will give us a random position around the origin. And then now we just have to figure out, well, our middle value is going to be 0. Now we have to just place it. And to do this, we can start at 0 and work our way up. So let's try this. So, well, first of all, we know that there needs to be something at, well, let's start actually at like 7. So that's the middle of the 0th block. Actually, no, it doesn't matter because we actually do -1 block spawn. So 0, and then we'll go and say, or no, I do like it being 7. It should be in the middle. We can do self.getBlock by pixel, and where's one? Oh, there's one. Yeah, okay. So get block by pixel, and then we give it the position. And so if there is something there, that is good. We need to have at least one case of finding a block if we're starting at 0, because we don't want to spawn stuff on the ocean where there is no block. But then we also want to keep iterating until we find the point where there is no block. So we want to start in the ground and go up until we find the surface. So we can start, like starting at 7 will give us starting in the ground pretty much. So this needs to happen, well, value to true at least once. So we can do 4y in range, and we'll go up to 10 blocks high. So we'll do, and so we'll put an else here. So actually, no, what it should be is if not, because there is no positive case, we don't have to do anything. So if it's not that, if y is 0, so if we are on our first iteration, wait, hang on, that's not. Wait, let me write a pass here. Position 1 plus equals self.block size. So we want it to go up on every iteration. Or we can do position 1 equals y times self. I like this more, plus 7. Anyways. Oh, no, this should happen in the front because it starts at 0. Anyway, so if y is 0, that means that we found water. Or like a cave where there's something over it, but I don't want to spawn in there. There will be an issue with this design where if there's like a cave and then there's an area above it, the area above can't have anything spawn, but that's a issue for later me. Anyways, so we'll set y, well, if y is 0, then we know we break out of, wait, we can, yeah, we break out of the height loop and we try a new location because this is a bad location. And otherwise, we found a spawn point because that means that it was not y equals 0. So we found after finding solid ground, we found an air spot. And that means that's the space we can spawn something. Now this will only work for smaller things that are reasonably sized. Actually, that might be a problem. I think the slimes are 15 pixels wide. That's awkward. Yep, wait. So I'm gonna have to do a quick change here. How do I want to do this? You know what? I'm gonna just spawn them in the ground for now. If it happens to spawn somewhere where it's like 1 pixel into the ground, that's its problem. It might teleport around. I don't care. Later on, I'm gonna have to do a thing where I find a spawn point that's wide enough for whatever entity I'm trying to spawn. But for now, this is good. Anyways, so if that happens, we can return our position, and that'll be a pixel position to spawn it at. And if it returns nothing, that means it tried 10 times. Actually, let's add a tries field. And then tries. So if it returns nothing, that means that it tried a bunch of times and couldn't find anything. It's not a huge issue. So what I'm going to do, try to find a spawn. We'll do self.world.findspawn. And we'll leave everything to the defaults. And then we will print out the result. Because we don't want to spawn it yet, we want to make sure our spawn is good. So let's go ahead and start our server back up. We need it to be clean. Oh, I don't need to print out all those chunks anymore. But we can start up our game and see what the server does. It crashed. Okay. So the error it gave me is wrong because the Python does this funny thing where if you edit the file, like it loads the code into RAM, or actually I guess generates bytecode when you run it, and so it knows the lines based on that. So it gave me the wrong line because I edited it after I ran it. So it thinks find spawn is missing the required positional argument, and then points to known players because of the line numbers. Anyways, where was it? Server. Okay. So I need this should be the player. We'll do player.x, player.y, player.z. I need to add like a thing where I can just grab all three of those easily. Or just do a dot position property. That'd be nice, but that's for later. Anyway, so I started the server up again. We see if, oh wait, this didn't, something like that. Oh, that's my avatar. All right, it ran, and we got a spawn position. So it's generating spawn positions on average once a second. It's going a little bit faster, but that's just luck. Anyways, so it picked a bunch of nice locations for me to spawn slimes at. So the next is to actually spawn the slime. So to do that, I'm gonna need, I guess, a slime network object, or I'm trying to think if there should be like an enemy class that it inherits from, because they're all gonna have to be damaged in the same way. They're gonna have a lot of behavior in common, but I don't think I actually have inheritance in my object stuff. I have like a weird thing going on. Wait, do I? Maybe I do. Let's see what I've got. Actually, no, I think I do. I did this stuff in a weird way. All right, let's find. I have not actually tested inheritance. This might go poorly. I think I'll make a general entity. Oh wait, you know what? So I might be able to get away with not even using inheritance for a bit because of the way my netcode's set up. So we'll open up net objects here. We need to make our enemy. I'll call it an enemy for now, and then it'll actually just be a slime. So class enemy sn.net object spec. So this is the specification. We do not want the players messing with the slime. The player should be able to damage the slime. Well, I need to look at my policy list. I forgot what my policy list is. I could do it with a damage event, and then you tell the server that you damaged it, or I could try to. Yeah, I don't want to directly modify the health property from the clients, because even though the server can reject it if the clients are hacking, the problem with that is that if two players are trying to shoot at the enemy at the same time, they might try to overlap too much with the editing. Now, if I made like kind of an atomic where instead of editing, like I could like make a custom atomic field where it could, or sort of like an atomic, I guess. I don't know. It is already kind of atomic, but I could set it up so that it, the operations on it are increment and decrement, which would be useful for health and damaging. But I think the appropriate way might be to actually have an event system for damaging. So you send an event to the server telling you in the server that you attacked or that your bullet hit that thing, and then the server can check it and stuff like that. Yeah. So that means, though, that I don't think that the clients need to be able to modify the enemy attributes in any way, which means that there's a special kind of policy I can use, I think. So here are the policies that I have, the default ones. So these are like who can see and mess with what. So we don't want it to be able to create, we don't want it to be able to edit, but we want it to be able to view. So we need the all viewer policy. So anyone can view it. The server is always an exception to all of these policies. The server can do anything it wants to anything. So our default policy will be the sn.presets.allViewer policy on the enemy. And the server will modify, wait, hang on. Do I want the server directly messing with the position? I was originally planning to have, yeah, I guess that works. I wanted the movements to be scheduled. That's how it was in the other multiplayer game I made. Not Pixcart, it's the one from like 2 years ago. Is that they were all scheduled. And then that way they happened on the clients at the exact same time. But if the server moves it, that's also fine. I guess that's easier to code. It's just not as nice for the player. I can change it later, I guess. But yeah, so I'll make it so the server can move it. And what it'll be is that the attacks will be scheduled, and the server will pre-compute where, or how do I want to do this? Because the problem with this is that if the server is moving it and it's not scheduled, then there's, if the movements aren't scheduled, then there's going to be latency to what the player sees. So if it attacks at a specific time, then the attacks are not going to be consistent across clients because they're going to have different latencies. So, which is why you need the scheduling on this, because otherwise the bullets are going to be in different places for different people. I could spawn the bullet server side as well, but the issue with that is that well, so the way bullets work right now is that they spawn and their position is based on their origin and their like angle and speed and the time it's been since they were spawned. So you can calculate the position of them. But it's going to be different for like if you try to attack, like if the server spawns all the projectiles without scheduling them, then they're going to appear after they've been shot by a decent margin on the clients, and they're going to be like way away from the enemy that attacked at that time. So it really does need to be scheduled. So the question then is, how do I handle the movement of the slime? Because it's going to jump around. maybe, wait. So the way the slime is going to work, I guess what it'll do is the enemies can't attack while moving. Or if they do, what it'll have to be is that the server needs to be able to predict exactly where it will... Well, no, wait. No, I guess that's fine. So what it'll be, I think what I'll do is most enemies will only attack when they're stationary. And so the effect of that is that the position can be controlled by the server. And then, but then the attacks can be scheduled, and because as long as there's enough space between when it stops moving and when the attacks are scheduled for, the projectiles should appear in the right location with respect to the entity. And it just happens to line up. If you've got like 500 milliseconds of latency, maybe that won't be the case, but that's your problem, not mine. So I think that's what I'll do. And then if I do an entity that moves, well, first of all, I can do the thing where it's movement, like this is what I did for the eyeballs on the other multiplayer game I did. It was that the movements were scheduled. And I could do something like that if the entity moves, so that the client can update it and so it's shown in the right position. I can also do it so that the server still schedules it, but then fires it for where it will be, so the server knows where it's going to be. The client doesn't necessarily know. And then there's just a little bit of an offset based on the between. It'll be dependent on the latency of where the bullets spawn and the enemy is. I don't know. These are the types of things you have to think about when you're doing networking. Anyways, and there's no networking framework that can 100% deal with that for you, unless it makes a lot of assumptions. And then if it makes those assumptions, like these are simple logical problems with dealing with the fact that I am restricted by the laws of physics. Yeah, so if you have to account for these logical issues when you do multiplayer stuff, no matter how good your networking framework is. If you don't, you may end up with just a suboptimal arrangement, I think, for how latency is handled. So I don't need angle or rolling. Actually, what do I need? So the server sets the position. The scheduled attacks, you know what? The scheduled attacks are going to be like a message thing. They're not even going to be the enemy. So I really only need the position and the enemy type. So the enemy type, we'll make that an int. So enemy type. I would like to say just type, but the problem is that's a keyword. Well, it's not showing there, but it is a keyword. This is like one of the only cases where in Python you have to declare your types is because it's networked. All right, so here's where the copy pasting happens. I should probably make this so I don't have to copy paste this, but this is just gonna be, wait, actually I don't need this, do I? Do I need this? Yes, I do need this. Wait, do I? Yeah, yes I do. Because there's going to be a render object associated with it, so I need the it's going to be enemy C. Okay, so it's literally the only two things I changed. I will make it so I don't have to copy paste that later. Anyways, so what is the other thing I have to do here? So there's that. I think there's something else I have to do. I do need to declare my enemy types, and I'll make a const file for that. Enemy. How do you make an enum? I already forgot how you make an enum. Whatever, I'll hack it for now. Class enemy type. Wait, enemy types, and then we'll just do slime equals 1. I don't want it to be 0 because 0 is the default value that can do some weird things. So I can pull this from const, and we've got our slime. And then, so the server can spawn it, and then I need the client to link it. So over here in, where's the entities? I need a new collection for the client that only the client has. Where did I put that? Entities. A lot of the stuff I'm doing is only going to be because I'm doing the first enemy. Wait. Hang on, how am I going to handle this? So I have to instantiate. I gotta wait until I know what the object is. I wait until I can call link, right? Wait. This is gonna be annoying. I think what I'll do for now is I'll just point the enemy to the slime. Later on, I'm going to have to wait until the server assigns the ID. Because what will happen is when an object is instantiated, you don't get all the fields at once. Each field comes as a separate message. And they can be bundled together. So I have like some packet merging stuff on my end that I handle. So they can be bundled together, but that's not guaranteed. So what will happen is sometimes you might get some, but not all of the information about an object at once. So it'll instantiate it first, the network object. So just because the network object is instantiated does not mean that you know what all the initial values are going to be for the object. I did mean to, I think I may have implemented a way to deal with it. I forgot in the framework. A simple option is just have like a flag that gets set when it's done. And then the client looks for that flag to properly instantiate all the stuff on its end. Anyways, so we're going to want our slime. So from .slime import slime. Did I actually code this? Yes, I did. So there's our slime there. So the enemy will be the slime. Where are these object IDs coming from? I always forget about this. Object ID comes from that. And then I search for that. And there's a .add somewhere. Oh, right. That's what this thing's for. That's why we have this on update thing. This is what's linking it for the client, and it needs to only do it for the client. The only reason why I have to do all this stuff is because I can't instantiate modern GL stuff on the thread for networking. So there's a bit of a hack that goes on there. I should probably reevaluate some of the stuff and adjust something so I don't have to do this thing, because I have like a separate child object for that handles all the rendering stuff. There's different architectures I could use to not have to do this, but this is not too tedious anyway, so I don't mind. Anyway, so this will be an enemy. And I think I can inherit from enemy and create another object. So this thing is going to be the actual class, which has properties that are not networked, and I could have like custom logic for that network object class. But then this is the actual networked part. So all of these are going to be networked. Everything declared in here is going to be networked. But I think I can inherit from this and then create like some other like thing that's based on an enemy. And then can I might be able to also make like one of these and inherit from enemy C. So like I have two classes that are like linked to each other inherently. I don't know, there's some weird stuff going on under the hood. I did a lot of stuff that you probably should not be doing with Python for this framework to try to make it the least amount of effort as possible to use this framework. So like a lot of the stuff here is like very, I guess, non-Pythonic is the way you could put it. And yeah, not very, it's very obscure the way this stuff works, but it ends up working out pretty well for me when I'm actually using it. Anyways, so when this is updated and it has its fields updated and it's not instantiated properly, it'll be linked to the thing and the client will try to instantiate it. And when the client instantiates it for the first one, it will if object ID is enemy, self.enemies, and then append, I guess. So self.enemies equals that. We'll do that for now. We can change that later. A lot of this stuff's gonna have to be localized later. But for now, this works fine. Self.enemies append, and we throw in our net object, and boom. Now, I do need a def link self pass. That just tells me when this object has been linked to the parent. Oh wait, I do need. This is also important. I need the field that it's going to use for linking the network thing. Okay. So the update function will be called automatically. So I don't think there's anything else I have to do there. Actually, the closer thing might be this. This is closer to what I need. It's a better reference. So creates the slime, rendering's all there. So now we just got to make the server generate it. I believe, just steal this thing. We don't actually have to do it that way for the server. So for the server, we go over here, we do spawn equals that, if spawn, and we don't want all this stuff. We literally just need this part, because it does not need, this is a bare bones networking portion, because we don't need all the rendering junk that the client has. So we just create our, we don't want a player, we want enemy. And then I can say, from net common import const, and I can say, I believe it's enemy ID, right? Is what enemy type. Man, sometimes I'll say ID and sometimes I'll say type. It depends on the day. And then we'll do const dot enemy types dot slime. So that'll spawn the slime, and then we need to set its position. So it's x equals spawn 0, y equals spawn 1, z equals spawn 2. And so that should do that. And then that will tell all the clients that it exists, and that's really all I need, because I don't plan on deleting them yet. So that'll happen when I can attack them. So I just wanted to see the slime there. So that should tell the client that it's there, and what I'll do is I'll say hi right here, just so I know that it's generated on the client, because chances are it's going to spawn in the wrong place or something like that. Very low chances I give that this actually works first try, but sometimes it happens. We'll see. Immediately crashed. Let's go. What is going on here? Cat keyer 00. What? This looks like it might be a ShopNet bug. That's not good. So this might have something to do. The way this works is it'll assign IDs for every single class you make to use under the hood, and the server and the client must use the same stuff, or else it's going to run into some problems. It's almost like it doesn't have the right stuff. 00. I suppose that's objects by ID. Wait, no. Hang on, that's the objects, I think. Is this on the player lookup? What's it trying to do here? Network process packet 164 is it gets the object ID creator. So it'll do this. If origin and self.use. In self.users. Hang on. No, the origin should not be in self.users. Or wait, unless this is. No, there's nothing that should have been created here. Except for the player, but the server does not tell the player about the player being created. So Does it know the user for the server? I can't remember. I think maybe it does actually. Anyways, object equals. I could say ask who the creator is, or the requesting user. So that information's already there. I can actually just turn on the debug. Where is this defined? I have debug on. Oh no, that's only debugs if I do something I'm not supposed to. Let's see. What could have happened here? So I could check. Where is the field ID? I do have the field name and class ID. I think, yeah. So let's do this. Print field name, class ID, and we'll also get the creator, and that will tell us. Oh, we can also pull the spec. That'll tell us what's being spawned. So is this a slime? Well, this would have to be the player, I guess, because the slime has not been spawned yet. So let's see what happened here. So it sets the rolling to 1. Why is it setting this stuff? Well, I guess this could be other players. I should restart the server, because it's trying to tell me about the other player that was here from the other time I crashed it, I guess. Let's try that again. There we go. So what happened here? So it tried to teleport. Yeah, it's setting the teleport flag, but then it tried to spawn a slime. I don't see the server did not try to spawn a slime yet. I don't think. Oh, no, I guess it doesn't tell me now. I removed the print statement that tells me. So it errored out when it tried to spawn the slime. That's interesting. So the question is, why does it not know about the collection for the slime? What happened there? Where's this code? So, hang on. Watch this by ID. So why is it trying to get? Wait, yeah, so I think I see the problem here. I made a mistake in not checking if object ID in self.objects by ID. I can do that, I think. Do I handle if get returns nothing? What should I do here? So there's this part right here. So it gets it. It assumes that it already exists. I don't check if the object exists. So why would it assume that it exists at this point? That is the question. Well, here's why. Because I check if it exists, and then I create it if it doesn't. So I shouldn't have to do that. I'm going to undo this change. I think the idea behind not doing that check if it exists in there first is to just make sure that it runs faster, because then you're looking up that in key twice. So what happened here? Back to here. So we receive the information about the object. If it does not exist, we create it. If it's not rejected. Oh, but then if it rejects, we return. So let's see. So you hit this case. So this means we don't have it. So if we don't have it, our cases are return, return, or do this, which is creating it. Instantiating this should put it in, I think. Well, here, let's do a test. So print instantiated, and we'll do feel spec. And you start the server, then we start the game. Start the game. There we go. Let's see what we got here. Instantiated class enemy. It is instantiated, so somehow it failed to link it. Well, or to throw it into the collection. How did that happen? So the class equals like this thing, but then it'll do like, this is one of the child classes that I defined in here. So it grabs the child class if I used one, and then it instantiates it. But if I go to here and I look at this stuff, which is being called, I think it should set the collection. Yeah, so it calls this. So print call add, and then self. I don't know if that'll tell me. That might tell me. We'll see. So we'll see if does it add it before it looks, and I mean in theory it should. I don't see why it wouldn't. Collection add. Boom. So now the question is, why is it not there? Did it get lost? So add self to the collection. So I think when you call the add on the collection, where's the collection thing? I had it pulled up. I have way too many tabs as always. You call add, it grabs the class ID and then creates the, well, this uses the full ID for this one. So it takes your object, grabs the class ID and the full, so it uses the full ID to put into there. So the question is this full ID equal to this? Is it 0, 0? Now that's a bit suspect. Is the problem that the server declares it? Because now that I think about it, my tests that I did, and this might be a pretty massive problem, the tests that I did, I only tested clients instantiating stuff. I think I forgot to test the server instantiating stuff, so I might have messed up my IDs on that. So the full ID, I believe, is composed of a couple things. Should be the creator and the local next ID, basically. Where's full ID? Full ID. Okay, self.creator and unique ID. And this stuff is declare, like this, where's this come from? Creator comes from here. New object ID. I think the ID is forced. Yeah, because otherwise it's going to be -1. So the server tells what ID. I think that's in the packet for the update. So it sends the ID and the creator, which is obviously the server, which is 0. So this first out value should be 0. And if it's the first slime it makes, it should also be 0. So that looks correct to me. Now the question is, why is that not the ID that was added in collection here? So here's what I have to do. Print adding object.full ID. And it might as well just throw in the class ID as well. We start it up again. I always forget to kill it. I need to fix the killing on this thing. It doesn't die properly. Interesting. So the ID here is 1. When I think it should be 0. So the question is, how did that get set to 1? So enemy type 1, 0. Wait, is that the... That might have been there the whole time. I just didn't notice. Oh no, it's the field creator. Creator 0. Creator 0. So it knows that. So it knows that the creator is 0. But then it's set there, and is that not the thing? This is using creator here. So how is it that when I get to adding it, I use a different ID? What? That's not nice of it. I'll take a look at chats. You like the underground multiplayer game? Must have been pretty fun. Yeah, that's the game design is being used for this one. Now it's just 3D now. Like yeah, it says 3D, and instead of space, it's ocean and islands. What about the math inside the game? Am I good at math, or did I just get used to it? I've learned math as I went with game development. Like for example, I learned most of the geometry and trigonometry that they teach you in school before I learned it in school. Just being interested in game development. But only the parts of those that you actually use in game development. Like, so for example, I don't like, there's all sorts of, like, if you take trigonometry at the classes, a lot of times there'll be all sorts of questions they'll ask about like what the graphs look like for certain variations of trigonometric functions, like in like where the like where like well with tangent where like the asymptotes are and stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, so there's all sorts of kind of useless stuff that you don't need for game development, specifically related to graphing. It might help you learn the topic, I guess, so I think that's why they teach it, because most things you're not going to use a lot of the random things where you have to know what the graph would look like by hand without using a calculator. But yeah, so the parts that I use for game development, I learned just doing game development, and you can just pick up that stuff as you go. Same thing happened with linear algebra. I learned a lot of it before actually taking linear algebra. There were some things I learned in linear algebra that I didn't know. But yeah. So that's generally how that goes. Have I written a voxel engine before? No. Do I think OOP is necessary? Not really. It's useful for some things. Where am I from? Florida. I guess I'm using Pygame. Well, very knockback mechanics. I talked about this before, and it will be that if you knock back an enemy, it's going to be an interrupt. So any attacks that it had scheduled at that point will get canceled, and that kind of makes sense. Actually, I wonder if the reason why that makes sense to us, like as a mechanic, is because other multiplayer games implemented that just as because that's the technically easy way to deal with it. But it's like a technical limitation turned feature that's actually kind of really cool, is that if you knock stuff back, it kind of cancels the current attacks. I don't know. What hardware do I use for my projects? I mean, computer. It doesn't really matter. I can run it on anything, so it's not particularly relevant. I can definitely write a multiplayer game in Python. PixCarts is living proof of that. I've already done a playtest with like 20-something people in a single race, and it works fine. There are some bugs I have to deal with, but like it works. There's nothing wrong with netcode in Python. In fact, one of the most ambitious MMOs that exists has their server code written in Python. So it's definitely a thing you can do. And there's nothing on the client side, there's nothing intense that would make it so that makes Python a bad option for the client. Like the throughput's not high enough for that to be like a concern or anything like that. Maybe on some very obscure types of games, but most of them, there's not any reason why the client-side netcode couldn't be in Python, aside from the fact that the rest of the game's usually not in Python. So there's nothing about multiplayer that makes that bad. And like I mentioned, EVE Online, all of their server stuff is, I think, in Python, stackless Python. What's the difference between a library and a framework? Not much. I think if you think about it in terms of what the words actually mean, not even in the context of software, it kind of draws the line for you. So a library is a collection of things that give you information. And in programming, it's instead of things that give you information, it might be like different functions that you can use. Whereas a framework usually refers to the basic stuff you need to do something larger. So like if you're framing a house, you put all the wood and stuff like that. It's the work you do on the frame. And so it's the basic core features that you need to do something bigger. So framework makes more like, for example, here's where I can draw. It's a vague definition, and I've not looked into this. This is my intuition of it, just from things I've seen. If I pull up my, where is it? MISC mutil. So if you look at this thing, I would not call this a framework. So this is a bunch of mathematical functions. So you go to a library, you've got all your books. You go to my mathematical utility library. You've got your different mathematical functions. This is not the framework that you're building around, on top of, and within to create something larger. Meanwhile, this PyTDF thing, the F literally stands for framework, and the reasoning is because it's the layer between modern GL and the game's code that handles all the rendering stuff. So I'm building on top of it, I'm working inside of it, like doing all sorts of stuff with it. So it's, I don't know, kind of the way you use it is different. And different things will have, will be, it's kind of more like a scale, or it's not necessarily one or the other. You can call PyTDF a library. I probably wouldn't, but yeah. ShopNet's kind of somewhere that's closer to the middle. I would still call it towards a framework, because it's a networking framework, but you use the game's not dependent on it in the same way. So it's a little bit closer to being a library than the PyTDF thing. So the definitions are vague, and that's just kind of, I guess, the colloquial understanding. I don't think there are hard definitions on what those things are. It's just interesting. How is my Pygame game very optimized? I have a video that mentions some of the stuff. The main thing is convert your textures. Actually, I'm not sure if you have to do that anymore. You at least used to have to convert them. I think you still do to get better performance. It's other stuff. Just don't show things that aren't on screen. It's a lot of basic stuff. Don't process entities that aren't on screen. Use dictionaries. Stuff like that. Do I think it's important for solo game devs to play a lot of good games? Probably, yeah. That's actually one of the problems for me, is that I mostly play VR games. I especially don't play platformers very often. But I mean, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think it helps. There are other things that are more important. What is the game I like the most? That would be Hue Flowing. Actually, I can show that. Hang on. My favorite is Hue Flowing. This one is, yeah, I just like this one artistically. I would like to expand on that idea. Do I recognize you? I don't. I'm bad at remembering names. The Gamedev course, what happened was did I say that last year? So there's a couple people that have asked me about that, and I've said different things at different times. The things that I've said to the most people was that I was planning on making a course, and this was like 2 years ago I started saying this. But what happened instead was I just made that 6-hour video, so you can go and watch that for free instead of buying it. Because I didn't want that to cost money. Now what I was thinking about was I could make that 6-hour video and then make other topics that I could turn into courses and sell those. But I'm leaning more towards, at this point, trying to make money off of game development than selling courses. That is, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of selling educational stuff to begin with. So it's tricky because I could just it is actually the sale of that stuff that allows me to make more, but I do prefer to be, like, if I'm making money, I prefer to do it from game development, because it's yeah, and then I could do just for fun, make the educational stuff. But yeah, so that course I would have probably was talking about was probably that Pie Game one at this point, the 6-hour one. Is there a quick rundown you can read somewhere on what benefits my networking framework provides? I have a video talking about what I was doing, like, it's my networking video, but it was just like a couple of videos ago. You can go watch that. It's the same core concepts. I reworked it, and it's a lot easier to deal with now, although now I'm debugging it because something went wrong. It's funny because this is I had one extremely minor bug that was like one line of code to fix or something that I ran into earlier, but other than that, this is the first thing I've run into. Definitely the bug that I've had to spend most time looking into, and by most time I mean I've probably spent about like 5 or 10 minutes at this point. So not that bad yet. But yeah, the core idea is that everything's a shared object, so I don't have to send messages around as much. I do have features for sending messages, but I mostly update attributes of objects, and that's just automatically networked, and I have permissions and all sorts of stuff like that. And hooks. You still have to download, no, you still have to do the conversion because it's not automated? Conversion of what? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about networking stuff in Python? Because that's what your last message is about. Anyways, so back to bug finding. So something happened. Images loaded in Python. Oh, you're talking about .convert. Oh. Well, but I think what happened was they made it so that even if you don't call .convert, it's faster than it used to be. It used to be that it was really slow if you did never call .convert. But I think I did test it at some point. It was faster, but I don't think quite as fast as if you did .converts. So it's not as important nowadays as it used to be, but it's still important, I think. And they might have changed some stuff now. I don't know. I haven't looked. Anyways. I haven't looked at that stuff in like 5 years. Anyways, so the issue was that we have our owner being set incorrectly. So 1, 0. It's interesting. Are these the same 1 zeros that I'm seeing here? So let's see. Where's this print coming from? So network, we have This is the class ID and the creator. Those are not the same things. So it should be that creator gets passed. That's what we're looking up here. And when we create the object creator set here, that's the same value. Nothing's messing with it. It should be, as we see here, that's at 0. And then that 0 should be the first value here. So the question is, where did that get lost? So there's .creator here. Oh, this is the bug. If self.creator equals that creator, if I did the classic mistake, I used the not. If you say if not self.creator to check for none, it will also evaluate to true if the creator is 0. And the creator will be 0 if the server creates something. So instead I have to do if creator is none. I think that might fix it. Let's see. Let's start up the server. Start up the game. And it was that simple. That's crazy. All right. And I see the high from the slime spawning, so that stuff's working. So the question is, where did the slime go? I'll leave that there. Let's remove all the debug stuff. Is that the only one in this file? Yeah. And then over here, there's some other debug stuff. Actually, no, there's in collections, I think. And here, that's gotta change. So there's a bug fix I did in here. It was simple. It just took me a bit to find, probably because I'm talking about it as in a stream, and it's just that the creators thing was done wrong. It's funny though, because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't thoroughly test, and it just kind of works because I happened to design it right. So that I'm hoping it works, because presumably that means that's the first time that I've done a server created object. I think I tested it on some level. I think I would have had to have, but I'm not sure. That's weird. Anyways. So now the question is, can I find the slimes? Oh, wait, the slimes aren't being rendered. I gotta get them to render. So they need to be in here. So for enemy in self.enemies, enemy.update. And we need to call render on them too. And they get the same uniforms as everything else, I think. And we will see if this works. Crashed. World entity.update, missing DT. Why does world entity need DT? That is the question. Wait, this should be a world physics entity. What's going on here? So let's double check our slime here. It should be a world physics entity. Why does it say world entity? Is this something else? What one could that be? But also I need to pull up the sprite thing. It's gonna be primitive sprite. So world entity function takes in DT. These make sense. Wait, does this one? Oh, that one doesn't have one. Oh, so I override it. Yeah, wait. What do I do on the player? Do I call super.update? Where's that update? Hey, wait, then where's its DT at? I don't see a super.update in here. What's updating it? Super. Super render. What is going on here? There is an update function. What's it for? Is it important? Sprite. Update. Oh, this is just for animation. So the reason I don't have a problem on the other stuff is because I overwrote the update function. And I can actually call this anyways. It won't hurt, I don't think. So def update self dt equals self.e.window.dt. No, wait, it's game.window. Game.window. And then super.update dt. I don't know why it says world entities. There might be something else that it's trying to do that for. Well, first of all, this can be, I can throw that update in there. I might need that later when I'm actually animating it, which I haven't yet. This one's a world entity, and this one's update doesn't call its parent, but it shouldn't have to, because I'm not animated. And I will throw that in as well, but oh wait, the DT on this one's dangerous. This is a different DT. This is the delta time from the bullet creation. I don't want to mess with that one. And then there's a weapon, which, yeah, that's an actual one. Super.update DT. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I would expect that to say world physics entity. We might get another crash, and that might give us a hint as to what's going on here. Now I'm seeing high. So the question is, where are the slimes? So what I can do is I can reduce the spawn radius on the server, because right now it's like it can spawn outside my window. Let's reduce the spawn radius. Where is here? Say radius equals 100 pixels. So this thing should be spawning pretty close. And I can actually print out the locations. Print. Oh, I know why. Haha, it's spawning 0, 0 technically. I can leave that to that. So there's this funny thing, because the modern GL object is separate from the networked object, I have to copy that in. I have to update its position all the time. So self.position equals that stuff, and that will update the slime's position for me. And now let's see if I can get me some slimes. There's one. There he is. There's some more. They don't have shadows yet. They're just kind of there. It's not... they blend in a little bit. Oh. Only projectiles, no HP. E. Okay. Self.e equals elements. Fixed. So there are the slimes. They're spawning in. You can see that they're placed on top. Oh, I'll need to get the... I will have to use the physics so that the server can move them. I didn't think about that one. That's gonna be a bit... So the server needs to be able to move them using physics. And for that, unfortunately, all the physics are in here, in this world, which I faked, I think. I need the block surround thing, which can still work. Is there a reason why I can't use this one? Let me see if there's a reason I can't use this world class. I can inherit from it. Probably. Where's my server scripts? Yeah, I can inherit from it, I guess. That would work. And then I can do the physics on it. The only other problem is that, so that's the easy part. The hard part is that the physics for the entities is bundled in with this modern GL stuff. So I think I might have to make a version of the entity that doesn't have the modern GL stuff in it. So I'll have like world physics entity, but then take out almost everything except for this. This is the function that handles 3D physics in this. So I don't need to render or anything. But I think it's been like 3 hours since I started streaming, so I'm gonna read chat and then end stream, I guess. Currently debugging your rollback networking code. I forgot what is rollback. I knew at one point. I forgot what it was. Networking rollback. Oh wait, is that the thing they use for fighting games? Wait, hang on. Rollback netcode starts in a unique way, treating both player inputs as local, effectively offline, and their opponents as remote. Where? Rather than wait for opponent's data to arrive, each local machine predicts what their opponent will do next. Yeah, I've always been confused how they do that. So like in fight, because the main thing that they use this for is fighting games, I think, right? So you try to predict what the other player, like what buttons the other player is gonna press. Is it just stuff like movement, or is it also like you're predicting they're gonna, like, for example, try to block something? I don't know fighting games well enough to know how they would have optimized that, but I never really understood exactly what the approach was there, because the default assumption in most things, like for what I do, is that, like, I mean, most games, yeah, what it is that the player keeps doing what it is currently doing, not that that you can predict that they will press a key, because that seems impossible to predict pretty much. Maybe if you basically need like a machine learning model trained on what the player's play style is. I don't know. But like, yeah, the easy solution is you just try to keep doing what they've been doing. And yeah, I me's that's what they do, I guess, in racing games sometimes, is like the car will keep going straight, or the car will keep turning at the angle that it's turning at, stuff like that. But I don't think it's very tedious for not a lot of benefit. I think in fighting games, like, it's kind of a necessity, though, maybe. And then, well, the reason it's called rollback, though, right, is because when it guesses wrong, it has to be able to undo everything it just did. I use Godot sometimes. I have a video about using it. I also use it for Blackthorn Prod Collab. The first one I did, not the competition. How do you have 2 rows of tabs? It's a setting in VS Code. You can search for it. I think you might be able to just search tabs and find it. It's like wrap tabs or something. I coded something for NASA, as far as you can remember. Can you tell kind of approach or something like that kind? I have not coded something for NASA. I don't know where you're getting that from. I've worked with NASA. It's different. But yeah, there's no like insights there that can be gained from talking about that. And then also, I can't talk about that. Talking about specifics as to what I am working on is specifically what I'm not allowed to talk about legally. Because then there's the risk of well, the reason there's different regulations for the space industry, because a lot of technology can be used for other stuff. So yeah, it's a risk to talk about specifics about any code to potential foreigners. I should try Python plus Relive for VR. Now, what I saw, I don't think Relive actually has the what is it? The OpenXR stuff implemented. Maybe it does. Last time I checked, Relive didn't have the OpenXR stuff. I think it just had stereoscopic rendering, where it's just placing two cameras. Yes, I've worked on rockets, but working on rockets doesn't mean that you're working writing stuff for NASA. It usually means you have to work with NASA, though. Where's it? Oh, right. So Python OpenXR. Here's what I found. Unofficial Python bindings for the OpenXR SDK to access VR and AR devices. I will have to look into it. So my guess is that what happens with OpenXR is that there's some way that you connect the OpenGL, which is what modern GL is using, to the headset, which I think may happen through here, but this should, I think, at least handle like your controller stuff. And I can hook this up to like this game here. So I can... I forgot. That's funny. I forgot to, well, this is an interesting stress test. There's a lot of slimes on the screen now because they've been generating for the last while. I forgot to put them in a random distance that is equal to or less than the radius. It was spawning them at the radius, so let's change that real quick. Where is, so it's a find spawn thing in my world on the server scripts. So right here, so radius by distance equals random.random. So you just multiply that by the radius, and that will stop spawning them in a giant circle. Because we don't want that. Anyways, so what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So I could actually make this into a VR game if I wanted. In theory. I need to figure out why this is not loading. But, yeah, so in theory... So the server knows what the terrain is right here. But my client does not. My client just thinks it's water because it hasn't loaded it. But yeah, the server knows what the terrain is, and you can see that some of those slimes are elevated. But, maybe I should just put an outline on it. Oh, actually, no. I think I'll just put an outline on all the entities later. It's probably the best course of action. Anyways. Yeah, so I can make this VR, I think. I just have to figure out the rendering stuff, which I don't think would be too difficult. So one of the things would be that I would have to completely change the projection matrix, I'm assuming. And I would also assume that the matrix that I need to make people not feel sick is probably out there. I can probably just look it up. And then there's probably like a bunch of constants that I just need to know to get the rendering I need for VR stuff. Like, and then you basically just set up two cameras for each of your eyes, and I guess the only thing I don't know how to do, which I would have to figure out if I wanted to do this, is get the rendering in OpenGL that I have here to what the OpenXR runtime takes, I guess. I don't know if it goes through there or if it goes through some other means, so figuring out how that connects. So literally just connect those two things, and I think I'm good. Now, connecting that might be complicated, which is the concern, but I don't think it would be. It's probably something I could figure out in like a week. So it'd be really funny if I make this game, online multiplayer game, and then suddenly it's in a VR MMORPG. Anyways, yeah, interesting stuff. I tried Raylib. I had performance issues with it, but that was like right when the Python binding was first created, and I posted some issues about it, and people were like, "Yeah, that shouldn't be that slow. There's probably an issue somewhere." And then they told me to follow up with the guy I think who made that, and I just never did because I didn't care enough. So yeah, I was, what was it? I was trying to render just a couple hundred things on the screen at once, and it was running into issues. Just with a basic test, it should not have been that slow. I think modern GL ends up being faster. Now, so one of the ways it is different though is that the size of what you're rendering does not matter as much as it does in Pygame. In Pygame, you run into issues when the size of what you're rendering is large because you're copying memory on the CPU. You can probably apply 2 new projection matrices, one for each perspective on top of the current one, and render both perspectives. Well, yeah, there's the way my camera works right now is it generates perspective matrix, like literally the camera object. Here's the base projection matrix, and then I do the look at matrix multiplication with it. So I would literally just place one of these camera's objects on each eye and point it at a specific angle. And then well, I would change, this matrix has to change. This is just a constant. That was a 4x4 table. But so that would have to change. And then I'd have to make two cameras. And then I would have to figure out, and this is the hard part, I think, figure out how to get the data to the headset. But it's OpenGL, so it shouldn't be too difficult. And all of the basic OpenGL functions are still exposed through PyOpenGL, so I can do pretty much anything I want to do with OpenGL, even though I'm using modern GL. So that's one of the nice things about it, is I can hack around modern GL if it doesn't have a feature for something I need. Although, yeah, I'm not sure how exactly it ends up working, so I don't know. I've heard that it's possible as well, so I will be very tempted to look into it if there's actually a player base on this game, because it would be very funny to play this game in VR. Anyways, so it's been 3 hours. Didn't get a whole lot done because I was mostly reading chat today, but I did get slime spawning. Yay. I have a lot of other stuff I want to do today. Wait, hang on. Let me pull my list. Where is my list? So today I wanted to do enemy spawning. I've done that. I need the movements on the slime attacks, health, death, and respawn, free vertex shader, a day and night cycle, weapon XP and levels, and then grass with the vertex shader. I don't think I'm going to do the grass today, but I'm hoping to get at least most of the rest of that stuff done today. And then tomorrow I'm going to be working on the dev log for all this stuff. I'll work a lot faster once I'm not streaming, because like I said, I spent most of the time just talking about chat stuff. Don't process the scene twice. You do have to process the scene twice, because I mean, you don't run update functions twice, but you have to do render calls twice, because it's a separate frame buffer. You would have to look into the OpenGL pipeline to understand how that works. You can't just insert in a different projection matrix without having to re-render everything, because it has to recalculate everything. It has to recalculate where all the vertices would be. It has to recalculate all the depths. It has to do all the generate all the fragments, and yeah, that's rasterization. And then you have to run it in the fragment shader and everything. So all that has to happen again as soon as you change your projection matrix. But you don't have to do much extra on the CPU. You can literally just tell the GPU to re-render all that stuff. And you just change the uniform. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so I'm going to end the stream. Thanks for watching. I do see that it seems like a lot of people enjoyed this significantly more than me drawing things for 3 hours on Pixcart streams. I mean, this is fundamentally more interesting, I think, to do multiplayer game development. Hopefully one day I can get, or later this year, I can get my overlay set up so you can actually see what I'm writing better.